So, what day is it today?
Tuesday?
Wrong. It's NWA Day.
They want NWA? Let's give them NWA.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
Okay, let's party.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-party, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. My name is J. Cal, and every Tuesday, I join you across all platforms to talk pro wrestling, but we're talking NWA in that 2 o'clock hour. And Daddy, it's NWA Day. I hope you're excited. We've got some big news coming out of the National Wrestling Alliance. We have a new, well, I guess I'll let you watch Power this week to find out what happens, because there are some championship matches, and I don't really want to spoil them, but we've been waiting on these results for quite some time. Again, the NWA Power airs every week on Roku Sports, and it airs at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and then they have a replay at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. So you could watch the episodes of Power every week on Roku Sports, or they also have a nice in-demand feature that you could watch from your phone, from your PC, from your Fire Stick, or I guess that would be your Roku stick. But nonetheless, you could watch the NWA anytime, anywhere on the Roku app. It's always streaming in demand, and as part of the wrestling channel that is available on both Pluto and on Roku. So with that being said, this is a very big week for the NWA. We have a couple things happening. Of course, it is the World Tag Team Championship match with the Immortals, who won the 2025 Crockett Cup, taking on the Crockett Cup winners of 2023 and your current reigning and defending NWA World Tag Team Champions, Mike Knox and Trevor Murdoch. We call them MURNOX here over at the Alliance blog. They will be defending their tag titles against the Immortals, Odinson and Kratos, who, like I said, won the Crockett Cup at 2025 in Philadelphia. So that's going to be a big-time matchup for those NWA World Tag Team titles. We also have what is essentially the last match for Max the Impaler Max the Impaler wrestles their final match in the NWA, taking on Nahi, the Dragon, El Dragón, and that's going to be a street fight. Now, Max the Impaler, I need some water here. Jackson, I see you, Jackson. I see you. Max the Impaler is a non-binary pro wrestler. 6'6", not 6'7". Max the Impaler is a non-binary wrestler. So during their time in the National Wrestling Alliance, Max the Impaler had competed in both the men's wrestling division and the women's wrestling division. We had Max the Impaler win the NWA Women's Television Championship and also the Men's Television Championship. Max the Impaler also competed in the tag team division, oftentimes teaming with Judas, now known as Frank in the NWA. And Max had some really historic moments as part of the National Wrestling Alliance. While women's television champion, Max the Impaler defended the title in Japan and also defended the title in the Netherlands. And that's pretty cool for any wrestler to take a title across the globe. I think is very interesting. I think it's just a very cool thing in general. But also, I feel like the NWA really kind of hurt the value of Max the Impaler by putting a title belt on on Max, I felt like diminished the character. It diminished the importance. It diminished the value of Max the Impaler. Prior to Max the Impaler joining the NWA, predominantly wrestled in Japan and in the US. Max the Impaler teamed with Heidi Howitzer as the Wasteland Warriors, really dominated women's tag team wrestling on the independent level. When Max came to the NWA, Max was mostly a solo act, and the NWA really tried to benefit off of that value, that being something that they couldn't just fit in one box. Max the Impaler, being non-binary, was able to fit in multiple boxes, and I feel like they were able to push Max in such a way that it created opportunity for them all across the board. But I think once you put a title on somebody, inevitably they have to lose. Max the Impaler would have to lose, and a character, a gimmick, a personality like Max the Impaler is damaged when they lose. And I know, like pro wrestling, you would think, oh, well, of course, wrestling is all about wins and losses. But think about The Undertaker. And as many times as The Undertaker was the WWE World's Champion, it never made sense to me for Undertaker to lose the title, because he was supposed to be bigger than that. Andre the Giant never needed a World's Heavyweight Championship to be over. He just needed to be Andre the Giant. And I feel like that's the same thing when we talk about Max the Impaler. Max the Impaler never needed a title to be over. They just needed an opportunity to be over. Over on TikTok, Ace Animal said, if I'm right, Killer Kross is part of the NWA. I don't remember some other place. No, he's not. Killer Kross is not a member of the National Wrestling Alliance. Killer Kross has wrestled for GCW. He'll be wrestling for Future Stars of Wrestling in Las Vegas, and he's wrestled in a lot of other places. But no, Killer Kross is not a part of the NWA, at least not yet. Not yet. Things could change always. But getting back to Max the Impaler, I feel like, again, it was a very interesting time for pro wrestling. It was a very interesting time for the NWA by featuring Max the Impaler, by featuring a wrestler that was non-binary, and it transcended culture and pro wrestling kind of together to have those opportunities to put Max in matches that you probably wouldn't have seen 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But again, inevitably, what goes up must come down. And for a character like Max the Impaler, I don't feel like it was ever a good idea to have Max lose. I feel like Max was at their best when Max won. So having Max win a television title and then lose that TV title, whether it be in the men's division or women's division, inevitably it made them look weak. Max would wrestle in tag team matches and would lose, inevitably making the tag team look weak. And I feel like with that kind of a character, with that kind of gimmick, with that kind of notoriety, Max probably should have just remained in the women's division and wrestled against women and been booked like Andre the Giant. Max did not wrestle in the WWE. I think Max has mostly been on the independents. And Max has kind of stepped away from the business. We haven't seen Max wrestle in a very long time. The last match that Max the Impaler had, again, and I'm just going to double check here on the old interwebs to see where Max has wrestled last. But Max the Impaler, their last match was against Nihan and that was back in August. And no, I'm not Kevin Owens. My name is Jay Cal. But getting back to, again, Max the Impaler, I don't know what's going to happen with them going forward. They stepped away from the NWA. I don't feel like the NWA asked them to leave. I think they simply just Max wanted to leave. So what's next for Max the Impaler? Don't know. I don't know. Hopefully a return to sport, a return to form, an opportunity to get over somewhere else. But as for their time with the WWE, That is done. Excuse me, not WWE, NWA. That time is done. Ace Animal says, I think she'll go up to NXT. I mean, it's a possibility. Now, Max is non-binary, so we refer to Max as they, them. I know it's hard, the pronouns, but I don't know that Max the Impaler fits the WWE, the WWE organization. Max is very out of the box. It's difficult to book somebody like Max because there is nothing like Max in pro wrestling currently. So we'll just leave it at that. Let's see. I'm going to go through some of the comments over here on YouTube and acknowledge our folks over here on YouTube. We got Millennial Noob in the chat says, hello, Alliance. How are you doing today? We're doing good, man. Doing real good. Today was gym day. Got some lifting in. Feeling big, feeling buff. And always good to get the creative juices going on gym days. Shogun, the great Hisa's in the chat. What's up, Hisa? One of the best dudes and one of the prime motivations for the Alliance blog was Shogun, was the great Hisa. So thanks for hanging out with us. Jackson, it's at the Alliance blog, brother. It's the same everywhere. You can find me on all social media at the Alliance blog. Meta, X, Blue Sky. I used to say other websites like dating websites, but now I won't because I don't want to get flagged for inappropriate material here on TikTok. So we'll just keep moving on. Let's see. Noob says, I still can't believe that Max the Impaler got let go. I feel like it's the other way around, Noob. I don't think Max the Impaler was let go. I think Max the Impaler left, and that's the thing. Yeah, Jackson, that's what I was referencing. Or a place where they have things that make rooms cooler, only room cooler. Anyways, but I can't joke around about that stuff anymore. Otherwise, I might get dinged. But yeah, I don't think Max the Impaler got let go, Noob. I think Max the Impaler opted to leave the NWA. And as evident is, I don't think Max is wrestling currently at all. Now, I also know that maybe Max is changing it up. Maybe Max is changing their appearance. I don't know. And I guess we won't know until Max resurfaces again. So, but I don't think that Max was let go of, if that makes sense. Noob says probably make them a double champion was a random idea. I don't think that was ever a smart idea to put both titles on Max simultaneously, because it just made it even more difficult to use that talent. Again, Sweet Vanilla, really, Sweet Vanilla, really. My neck is fine, thank you very much. Jeez, even my own wife. My wife. What's up, David Valentine? How are you doing today? A character is damaged goods. Yeah, I mean, and I hate to say it, but I feel like the NWA definitely damaged Max's value. I think had Max left before, had Max left after losing the television titles, I think Max would have still been in play. But the fact that they kept putting Max out there after losing the belts, I just don't know. I don't feel like it was a good decision. Ace says people think I look like Kevin Owens because of my beard. I can't help what color my beard is. I don't dye it. Like, this isn't intentional. This is Mother Nature. This is what Mother Nature intended me to look like. I don't go and take a gray Sharpie and just color these in. Look over here on these hairs. Like, look, they go brown, man. It goes like brown and red. I'm not sus, Sweet Vanilla. How dare you? How very dare you? Sam Retro's in the chat. What's up, Retro? Retro's my guy. Yeah, Retro. This is a good night for wrestling fans. If you're a fan of the NWA, this is a good night. If you've never watched the NWA before, this is the night to watch it. I'm repping the Southern Six shirt because we've got our guy, Thrillbilly Silas Mason, challenging for the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship, taking on Thom Latimer, who's been a fantastic champion. Defended the title in the UK, has defended the title in Canada. For Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, one of the biggest wrestling promotion in all of Canada. Thom Latimer's defended the title there, all across the US. Defended it in Beep the Skibbity Toilet, fam. What are you, Sweet? Did you get hacked, Sweet Vanilla? Are you hacked? You're acting like a hack. Watch out, or he'll pop up powerbomb you. Sweet Vanilla knows. She knows. I was just watching, and I think Always Ready when Max made their debut. Rush the ring trying to get Camille. That's the Max we needed in the NWA the entire time. 100%. And I feel like what would have been a better use of Max the Impaler was to be that chief rival to Camille. Camille was great. Camille was the powerhouse. Everybody loved Camille. Max should have been the anti-Camille, and that would have been the best way to book Max the Impaler. Sarah Logan tried to steal Max's character. I mean, that's kind of true. That explains everything, Sweet Vanilla. You had to drink a Ghost. I drinking a Dr. Pepper with cherry, strawberry and cream, not cherry at all. Late faking news. The NWA is going to bring in Mr. Anderson to beat up Thrillbilly Silas Mason. I don't think that if I'm going to bring in someone to beat up Thrillbilly Silas Mason, which, let's be honest, there's very few people who are going to be capable of doing that. I don't think Ken Anderson is the guy that's going to make sense. What's up, Sammy? I hope you're doing well. Thrillbilly Silas Mason is the guy, man. Like, he is the guy. I want to go to New York too, Sweet Vanilla. That's such a random thing to say in the chat. But I feel like Silas Mason is the pinnacle of what the NWA has to offer. Former national champion, former television champion, maybe the best promo in the business right now. And again, if you guys haven't watched the NWA before, and I know there's a lot of you on TikTok who haven't seen the NWA, over on YouTube, we're pretty much all of us are NWA fans. If you go and watch Roku tonight and watch Thrillbilly Silas Mason, I haven't seen tonight's episode yet, but I know what happens. And Thrillbilly Silas Mason, if he cuts a promo, you are going to say, damn, that guy is so good, he should be in the WWE. Damn, that guy is so good, he should be in AEW. Because he is the future of the National Wrestling Alliance. If the NWA has any future at all, they need to tow that hitch up to Thrillbilly Silas Mason. When was the last time I played cards? It's been a while. What are you asking? Thrill would wipe Ken off the map. Yeah, I mean, it's not even going to be close, man. He would dog walk Ken Anderson. Hey, you Jacob Fatu fan? Yeah, he would dog walk him. He'd dog walk him. I love Thrillbilly Silas Mason. That's why I'm wearing this shirt, man. Look at this. I support the Southern Six. I poker. I don't even know her. My wife, everybody. My wife. Anyway, so tonight's going to be a good day for the National Wrestling Alliance. Now, I'm going to be a little honest here. I'm kind of disappointed. Like, Patrick was supposed to be joining the chat today because Patrick had some questions about the National Wrestling Alliance, and I was going to answer those questions for Patrick. But since Patrick isn't in the chat, I guess I'll just answer them anyways. So the question was, why you look like Kevin Owens? I don't know, man. I just do. I can't help it, all right? I can't help the fact that I look like Kevin Owens. I mean, he doesn't have these beautiful hazel eyes like I do. Look how green they get. Yeah. Oh, man. A lot of folks think I'm Kevin Owens, and it's funny to me. I'm just going to go ahead and block this person for spamming the chat. Don't need to have that. Sheamus did the Cesaro spin, and Ray did the Daniel Bryan yes hand movement. That's cool. Hey, Penelope Jones, thanks for the support, the Heart Me, and the Go Popular. I do appreciate that. If you guys want to help grow this channel on TikTok, heart me is all you need to do. Sweet Vanilla, I did not block you. Penelope, I'm having a great Tuesday. I get to talk pro wrestling. My wife is harassing me in the chat, and I got to go to the gym today. People think I look like Kevin Owens. The NWA has a great television show that's happening tonight. We're going to have 2 world championship matches, and I really feel like it's a good time to be a wrestling fan and talking wrestling. Ace Animal, I would never block you. I block the person that says, follow me or I keep spamming you. And I'm like, no, I just block you. I don't deal with that. You're not going to intimidate me. I'm too old for that shit. You can't intimidate me. Too old. Wisdom. Age. Big Luke. Oh, this whole show is going to hell in a handbasket. Intimidation. Oh my God, you guys are killing it. I don't need to plan a show if you guys are going to just keep making me laugh. Just do it. Okay, everyone's check it out now. All right, should I get back to talking NWA or should we just be goofballs? What do you guys want? Sign off in the chat. Steve G, what's up, brother? JKO is, you're pushing it, Jay, because I just don't want people to call me JO, you know? Like, I don't want that. I don't want to be J Owens. You know, you can call me like TikTok shop Kevin Owens. If that'll make you feel better, you could do that. But not JO. Never JO. I don't want to be called JO. I think that's fair. I'm not asking for a whole lot. I apologize to all of my audience, not just those of you who are watching on TikTok. Thanks for the follow, Jay. Appreciate that. All right, let's get back to some NWA talk. I know that that's not what you guys are here for, or at least those of you on TikTok, but that's kind of our main platform. Steve G, am I having YouTube problems? I don't think I'm having YouTube problems. Thank you, Sweet Vanilla. I appreciate you being earnest and honest. I'm just double checking. Like, I think everything's working on YouTube. Probably get in trouble for saying YouTube, but hey, whatever. It looks like it's working to me. Sorry. I apologize if it's not, but it looks like it's working. You earn money. You pay me. Have I ever been to WrestleMania? The last WrestleMania I went to was WrestleMania 12 at the Arrowhead Pond, a.k.a. the Honda Center. It was the 60-minute Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart, in which Bret Hart was screwed. Royally screwed. He should still be World Heavyweight Champion. World Heavyweight Champion. The World Heavyweight Champion is currently Thom Latimer, your NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion. And tonight he defends the 10 pounds of gold against Thrillbilly Silas Mason in what will go down in the annals of pro wrestling as one of the greatest moments of our collective lives. Steve G, I'm sorry you're having YouTube problems. I don't know. Sorry. Sucks because I wish you weren't, but sometimes it happens. Anyways, let's talk a little bit more about what. That's a lot, Jay. Jay's been to WrestleMania 26, 32, 39, 40, and 41. I don't think I'll ever make it to another WrestleMania because the prices are so high. That's why I try to encourage people to go to independent wrestling shows. I've been to a handful of them this year alone. Like, I know Game Changer Wrestling is not really traditional independent wrestling because they are a nationally touring wrestling company. But like in my own backyard, there's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. They do TV tapings in Irvine, California, and also Oxnard, California. And I go to those shows, not the ones in Oxnard, but the ones in Irvine as much as I can. And then this year I also went to Epic Pro Wrestling. They definitely are the definition of independent pro wrestling. Good people over there. We support that show. And actually, Jay, if you are in New Mexico, there is a promotion. It is Duke City Wrestling. They are the NWA affiliate, NWA Albuquerque, Duke City Wrestling. You should check them out. They're relatively new promotion. I mean, I think they've been around for a few years, but not very long. And they do have ties that directly tied into the NWA. One of their announcer on the program is actually Pollo Del Mar, who is the manager of champions and a friend of the show. So I always, if you are in New Mexico, check out NWA Albuquerque, Duke City Wrestling. Yeah. I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but we know that the NWA Women's Champion Natalia Markova has been there. We know that Brian Idol has been there. Yeah, Sweet Vanilla has been to a lot of wrestling shows this year. I think Sweet Vanilla has been to several wrestling shows. Chicken of the Sea. Yeah. I think it's, Pollo Del Mar, Chicken of the Sea. Yeah. Pollo Del Mar is a, what's the word I'm looking for? A wrestling personality, a drag queen wrestling personality. There it is. Thank you, Sweet Vanilla. And very entertaining. Thanks for the heart me, Jay. Appreciate that. Thanks for the TikTok. I appreciate that as well. And Pollo's even done wrestling shows in Palm Springs, California. Patrick, I was waiting for you to come on so that I could start talking about the NWA a little bit more deeper detail. Matthew Miller, thanks for the heart me. Appreciate that. Ace Animal, without telling me where you live, like what state do you live in? What region do you live in? I could probably tell you if there's a wrestling in your area. But Patrick, getting to your question from earlier about the National Wrestling Alliance, Ace, there's a ton of wrestling in New York. What part of New York do you live in? Upstate? Or are you more like in the city? Or where are you at? I mean, don't tell me your address or anything, but what borough are you in? Are you in a borough? But Patrick, getting back to the NWA question. So the National Wrestling Alliance, the National Wrestling Alliance has always been a group of independent wrestling promotions. They work together as a single entity. They all work together. You hear the term the territory system, but they do work. Ace Animal, message me off after I get off, and I will. That didn't sound right. Message me when my live stream is over, and I will tell you if you feel like it. If not, I understand that too. Okay, so the National Wrestling Alliance has always been a group of wrestling promotions, right? There were the most famously Jim Crockett Promotions, which later became WCW. But there was always other affiliates of the NWA, other territories. Don Owens in Portland, the NWA Hollywood group that was with the LaBelle family, and Eileen Eaton was the first female wrestling boxing promoter. She and her sons, the LaBelles, ran the Hollywood territory. There was, Georgia Championship Wrestling. There was wrestling in Texas, and these NWA territories all work together to recognize one single individual World's Heavyweight Championship. That is how the NWA started. And in the 1990s, in like 1992, EMLL, who was the Mexican NWA member, the Mexican wrestling promotion, left the NWA. In 1993, both WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling also left the NWA. And that scattered the NWA. It was already very few promotions left. There was NWA in NWA Texas, which was basically Jim Crockett Jr. There was Dennis Corluzzo was running NWA New Jersey. Howard Brody had an NWA territory in Florida. Then you had members who were still part of the NWA but weren't exactly running events, like Steve Rickard, who is based in New Zealand as a member of the NWA. got distracted, was also a member of the NWA territories, part of the NWA board of directors. Antonio Inoki was still part of the NWA board of directors, even though New Japan was out of the NWA. The NWA continued to grant a membership to Inoki, which later would be a part of UFO and later 01 and also the Inoki Genome Federation. All this to say is that when the NWA had all these things going on, ECW as well. Good point, Retro. There was still a collective promoting the NWA name. And then, of course, during the Monday Night Wars, the WWF at the time brought in the NWA titles like Jeff Jarrett as the NWA North American champion, the NWA World Tag Team Champions as the Rock and Roll Express. And they continued to perpetuate the NWA. When they did that, that created a whole list of more NWA territories. And that would create Joe Price in Florida. That would create Mike Porter in Tennessee. That would create Ken Taylor in the NWA Southwest. Rick O'Brien in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of these NWA territories would come into existence. Now, as a group, those territories still had a board of directors. They still had an LLC that was called Pro Wrestling Organization. I know there's a lot of backstory, and the reason why I have so much backstory is to explain what happens next. In the early 2000s, things were going great for the NWA. In 2002, they licensed the titles back. They licensed the titles to TNA Wrestling. In around 2002, TNA Wrestling had exclusive licensing agreement for the NWA World title and the World Tag Team titles. And while that was happening, the rest of the board controlled titles, the NWA North American Tag titles, the NWA North American Championship, the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title, the NWA Women's Championship, and there was a bunch of titles that were considered board-directed titles. Again, that LLC controlled those board of director titles. And they would also direct the flow of members. Now, Patrick, you brought up Burt Prentice. Burt Prentice was Music City in Tennessee. Yes, and he was a member for a short time, but it wasn't Burt Prentice. It was Bill Behrens, who was the NWA member. And when Bill Behrens went to Georgia with NCW, later Wildside, Music City lost its affiliation with the NWA. So getting back to all of that is to say that so you had this board of directors who were still kind of controlling the NWA, even though the titles were TNA Wrestling. Those TNA titles would later, the agreement with TNA and the NWA would end, and those titles would come back to the NWA. So you had a lot of championship belts back in the NWA, and you had all these territories all throughout the United States and a couple in Japan with 01, and you had a bunch of territories. And they were always looking to add in new territories and try to subtract some. Ken Taylor was the promoter for Texas. He was NWA Southwest, but he was also a little bit difficult to work with at times. And the NWA were looking to add more members into Texas, which would mean that he would lose part of his controlling interest in the state. In order to do that, they made a backdoor agreement that basically kicked Ken Taylor out of the NWA and brought in Bruce Tharp and Chris Ronquillo. Chris Ronquillo, also known as Tony Brooklyn, was the NWA Houston promoter, and Bruce Tharp was the NWA Brownsville promoter. Basically, they came in and they took over the territory. Well, there was a coup, and those promoters wanted to get a more controlling interest of the NWA. And at the time, the NWA was being ran by, Bob Trobich. He was the executive director of the National Wrestling Alliance. And Bob Trobich was the one who kind of had a final say on things. So after they booted Ken Taylor, they brought in Ronquillo and Tharp, and immediately Ronquillo and Tharp were trying to get leverage for more power. They're trying to leverage for more, not ownership, but they wanted more power within the NWA. They wanted a bigger say. And now you already had established promoters like Bill Behrens, who was in Georgia, Dave Marquez, who was in California, Mike Porter, again in Tennessee. I'm forgetting a lot of names here, but there was a lot of different promotions who were still around. they wanted to take the NWA and do something bigger with it, they being Tharp and Ronquillo. And there was this disagreement between those two parties, and essentially they looked for a loophole to sue the National Wrestling Alliance over insurance, and insurance that they felt was misleading or fraudulent or whatever. And the NWA members got sued by the two promoters in Texas. Later, they added a third member in Fred Rubenstein. Now, Fred Rubenstein was the promoter for NWA New Jersey. So when he flipped, it was kind of a pretty significant deal. This also got really kind of dirty because the NWA, the lawsuit, the NWA membership was also based in North Carolina. Like, that's where they had filed the LLC. That's where the company was based out of, the Pro Wrestling Organization LLC. The lawsuit was filed in Brownsville, Texas, where Bruce Tharp was an attorney and was very familiar with the legal judges down there. And it, at least on the outside looking in, it felt as if they purposely contested the contract, and the negotiations took place in Texas, in Brownsville, which gave them an edge because now, Bruce Tharp was practicing law in that state. And the NWA executive director, Bob Trowbridge, was not legally allowed to practice law in the state of Texas, as he was, had the bar in North Carolina. That's where he was from. So that caused controversy. And essentially they were trying to assert control over the NWA. And they went to every single member of the NWA and said, hey, you're either with us or against us. You either join us and we all sue the old LLC and you fall in line, or we're going to add you to the suit. And Dave Marquez was one of these guys that said, okay, hey, I'm interested in hearing what your business plan is, but until you have a business model, I'm just going to stick with what I know. That didn't sit well with Ronquillo and Bruce Tharp. And they actually filed to put Dave Marquez in that lawsuit, along with Bob Trowbridge and a lot of the other members. Like Dave Republic was in there. I think Bill Behrens was listed in there. And essentially the way that the lawsuit was set up in Brownsville, there were a lot of movements, a lot of legalese things that happened that made it very difficult for Pro Wrestling Organization to fight this case. And it came down to, they started hemorrhaging money. And at the time, as a company, as a board of directors, it didn't have a ton of assets. It had the IP of the NWA, about $50,000 in a bank account, and that's it. So when the lawsuit happened, the board of directors voted, instead of contesting the lawsuit, they would settle, and with the IP, and meaning the intellectual property and the assets of the NWA, to this new company in the lawsuit. And this new company would be the International Wrestling Corporation, the IWC. And that was just headed by Bruce Tharp, Chris Ronquillo, and Fred Rubenstein. So they collectively ended the board of directors of the National Wrestling Alliance. They ended the territory program as we know it. And once Bruce got control of the NWA, they changed the dynamic of a territory system to a licensing system. So if you came to the NWA, you were no longer a member of the NWA. You held a license that you had to renew yearly. And Dave Marquez, because he objected to their ownership, they filed a judgment directly against Dave Marquez and effectively made sure that he would not be a part of the NWA going forward. So Bruce Tharp had control of the NWA. It wasn't long before he had a falling out with Fred Rubenstein, and then later Chris Ronquillo, essentially kicking them both out of the NWA. They all sued to gain ownership of the NWA, and then he's the one that ended up with the NWA. Now, at the time, this was all okay because he had this agreement with New Japan Pro Wrestling. They were literally sending talent to New Japan Pro Wrestling to defend the title. So they put the title on Rob Conway, and they had Jack Stain and a couple other talents from the NWA that they would send to Japan to represent this warring faction of the National Wrestling Alliance. Well, Bruce Tharp also made sure that he had tickets to these flights to go to Japan. And this included guys like Chase Owens. This included guys like, who else am I forgetting here? Big Daddy Yum Yum. Essentially, they all were getting flown out. And the NWA was literally hemorrhaging money to get these titles in Japan, to get the NWA in Japan. And that got very expensive. It got to the point where, thanks for the GG, it got to the point where the NWA was losing so much money that they couldn't afford to keep running live events. And it got really rough. And so at this point, Bruce, who had spent all this money to try to make the NWA relevant, now was trying to sell the NWA to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they were not interested. He went on to try to sell the NWA to WWE. They also were not interested. And at the same time, he had also taken possession of the Paul Bosch library, not ownership, but just possession, and was trying to make a streaming service with the NWA, thinking that would help generate revenue for the company. But it never did. It never had more than maybe 100 members on that subscription. And they kept trying and trying to do things to get the NWA to be, to carry some value, but they couldn't. And these licensing agreements that they had set up with all the NWA members were not sustaining the company enough to keep running the NWA. And so what finally happened, thanks for the follow. What finally happened is the NWA, who was hemorrhaging money, they couldn't keep doing what they were doing. They were looking for somebody to buy the NWA. They went to Matt Riviera. He had some investors. He was interested in buying the NWA. They had Billy Wood, who was a former NWA member in the UK. He was interested in buying the NWA. And they were all trying to get the NWA for what they could, which was like pennies on the dollar. Now, remember, Bruce Tharpe didn't pay a dime for the NWA. He sued for it. But he was trying to recover all of his losses, sending talent to New Japan Pro Wrestling and trying to get that streaming service off the ground, the NWA library, NWA Classics, I think is what they called it. And the money wasn't there. And around that time is the same time that Billy Corgan was working with TNA Wrestling, and he was trying to buy TNA Wrestling from Dixie Carter, and he basically lost a lawsuit where he was trying to allege that Dixie Carter owed him so much money that he should be the rightful owner of the NWA. It didn't come to fruition. And what happened was you had a guy who was interested in running a wrestling promotion, and you had a wrestling promotion for sale. Sounds like a match made in heaven. So Bruce then found out that Billy Corgan was interested. Now, Billy Corgan at that time was working with Dave Lagana, and on the back end, Dave Marquez. Dave Marquez could not be a part of those negotiations because Bruce Tharpe hated Dave Marquez. Hey, Sydney, thanks a lot. Have a good night. So what happened eventually after all of this, and sorry to be so long-winded, is Bruce finally found out that he could sell the brand to Billy Corgan. Billy was going to offer him a lot more than what the other potential investors were willing to pay, but not as much as he wanted. He wanted like a 7-figure deal. I think they settled somewhere on a low 6 figures, like low. I mean, if this would have been a couple of years ago, your boy Jay could have bought the NWA. And when Billy bought the NWA, he did it like, so I left this part out. When Bruce Tharpe took control of the National Wrestling Alliance, he took control of the NWA and what was at the time a co-op. The NWA was a co-op. It was a bunch of members representing a board of directors. Those board of directors ran the LLC. So if you had a wrestling promotion, it didn't mean you were part of the board of directors. It means you were part of the LLC. But of course, the board of directors were the ones that made the decisions. And of course, they had an executive director who was the boss. When Bruce Tharpe got the NWA in his possession, they did away with all of that. There was one owner of the National Wrestling Alliance, and that had never been what the NWA was. Going back to 1948, when the NWA came into fruition, when it formed, it was always a co-op of wrestling promotions working together. When Bruce Tharpe took over, he was the NWA. Exactly. So when Bruce Tharpe sued, got control of the NWA, he became the executive director, the president, the owner, whatever terminology you want to use. He had 2 other partners that he was able to get them kicked out of their own like investments. They had to walk away. I believe Chris walked away with something. Fred walked away with nothing, if I'm not mistaken. They were all kind of snakes in the grass. They all kind of screwed each other. But Bruce left with holding the NWA, holding that IP. So when he sold the NWA and sold it to Billy, Billy bought the NWA. Not every territory, not every promotion around the world. He bought the IP and the history of the NWA. So when Billy Corgan started promoting pro wrestling, and we saw this start off with the 10 pounds of gold series that featured Tim Storm, they freezed all the other titles. So the NWA Women's Championship, which was held by Jazz, became frozen. The NWA Junior Heavyweight title, which was held by what's his name? I'm forgetting his name, and I feel really bad. Barrett Brown, frozen. The NWA television title, frozen. The NWA tag titles, frozen. The NWA North American title, frozen. Every championship was frozen except for the 10 pounds of gold. And that's all their focus was with the 10 pounds of gold and Tim Storm, who was the world champ. They started promoting those events, the 10 pounds of gold series. They started promoting those events typically with Dave Marquez Associated Wrestling Promotions, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. At the time, Dave also had a stake in one of the deathmatch promotions, whatever. Anyways, Barrett Brown, thank you. So essentially what happened is under Billy Corgan, the NWA was started off as just a YouTube series. You can watch the NWA. They do have a YouTube channel. You could also watch them on Roku or Pluto completely for free. You don't need to even have an account, but the new stuff is only on Roku. And they do show some newer matches on YouTube, but it's kind of a mixed bag. Anyway, so Billy Corgan has control of the NWA. By the end of 2017, CZW, thank you, Patrick, CZW. They actually had the title match December 9th, 2017. Tim Storm loses the title to Nick Aldis, the former Magnus, the former TNA champion, the guy that Dave Lagana and Billy Corgan had a good relationship from his TNA days. And they started putting this whole promotion on Nick Aldis's back. It started off with, they did the 70th anniversary show, which happened, I believe, in 2018. And that was built on the backs of the AEW, the first all-in event that had Cody versus Nick Aldis. Then they would have a couple of pay-per-views in 2018 and 2019, and they would launch Power in 2019. Again, remember, this was all under Billy Corgan's NWA. At that anniversary show, the 70th anniversary show, they would unfreeze the women's title, so Jazz would be able to defend her NWA championship. They would reintroduce the national title. Willie Mack would win a series of matches to become the NWA national champion. And then on that first season of Power, or maybe it was the second season, they would reintroduce the television championship that, Ricky Saints would win. Ricky Starks would win that and become the first champion. They would crown tag team champions at the Crockett Cup in 2019. And that would be won by PCO and Brody King. They would win that year's Crockett Cup and become the tag team champions. And then before the first episode of Power aired, Thom Latimer and Royce Isaac would win the tag titles. And that would be your NWA, basically. I don't know if I answered your question, Patrick, but I hope I did. So why does Bruce Tharp have beef with Dave Marquez? Because Dave Marquez did not side with Bruce Tharp during the litigation. Why did Dave Marquez come back to the NWA? He never wanted to leave. He always loved Dave Marquez. Even today, if him and Billy could reconcile, which I don't think it could happen, if Billy Corgan was like, "Hey, Dave Marquez, I want you to come back and run television for me," I think Dave Marquez would jump at that in a heartbeat. He loved the NWA. He put millions of dollars into the NWA. When Dave Marquez was running his NWA, which was NWA Pro Wrestling or NWA Hollywood, they were doing arena shows all across the Pacific and the Southwest. They did shows in Arizona, California, Las Vegas, Texas, Florida, the whole Southern Bible Belt. They were doing wrestling shows in these areas. He put millions of dollars into this, millions. So I think if Dave Marquez had an opportunity to be a part of the NWA today, I think he'd jump at it. But yeah, so that takes us to where the NWA is today, and that is they just had their 77th anniversary show. What's up, McLevin? Yeah, and Chris points out, like, just getting back to Bruce Tharp. I mean, yeah, Bruce wanted to be a character. Bruce wanted to be a part of the show where, like, you know, Billy Corgan doesn't want to be a. Thanks for the follow, Ethan. Billy Corgan doesn't want to be a character on the show. He doesn't. He enjoys announcing, I guess. He enjoys, like, putting those presentations over, but he's not a character. Dave Marquez never wanted to be a character. No, most of the people involved with the NWA never wanted to be an on-screen role. Bruce wanted to be a character. He wanted to be the evil manager. And I still think that would have been a perfect role for him, even in Billy Corgan's NWA, just never came into fruition. Sorry. Now, Patrick, that's another good question. Why did they not bring back the North American title? To the best of my ability, what I was told was that Dave Lagana was very interested in the title histories and essentially not trying to inundate the promotion with a ton of titles. The design of that national title today is technically a North American title design, but they didn't want to call the title. Sorry, Mia, I am tired. I've been talking for like 2 hours now. The reason why they brought the title back to the NWA as the national title and not the North American title was because the North American title was already brought back to wrestling in the form of NXT. And I feel like that was a smart decision because they didn't want to have any confusion in the market, which we're seeing the opposite now, where AEW is introducing the national title and even like hinting that it had ties to the NWA. There's no ties to that. Yeah, Chris brings it up. AEW is copying the NWA and its traditional titles. I mean, they're paying homage to it, and I really feel like that's coming from a good place. But the fact that the national title exists, I feel like that was a bad move. Yeah, Ricky Stark was in the NWA during the Power era. He was on the first episode. Nick Aldis was a huge fan of Ricky Starks. And Ricky Starks actually, going back to the 70th anniversary show, Ricky Starks was part of the national title match. So was Sammy Guevara. So was Scorpio Sky. A lot of these guys who would later go into AEW. Colt Cabana. A lot of them were working for the NWA at the 70th anniversary show. Sammy Guevara obviously got signed right away. Scorpio Sky and the SoCal Uncensored got signed up with AEW pretty quickly as well. But Ricky Starks was one of the pillars of the NWA, and they had seen a lot of potential in him. He was the national champion, or excuse me, the television champion. And then he lost the belt to Zicky Dice. And then the pandemic happened, and there was kind of a freeze. And then Ricky Starks at that point, asked for his release and then signed with AEW when the opportunity came. So then getting back to the North American title question. So they didn't want to have a North American title that NXT had just introduced, the NXT North American Championship. Yeah, and Sam Retro points out that Starks was technically in the NWA during the Tharp era as well. And we know that because he actually used to team up with our former co-host, Kevin Douglas, in those Texas territories. In fact, we actually had Ricky Starks on this live stream many, many years ago, but he had been on the podcast as well. And Jamming the Music Man points out that during that first season of Power, you had Ricky Starks, you had LA Knight, James Storm, Eddie Kingston. And yeah, they had a lot of really good guys. They brought Trevor Murdoch has had a great second career with the NWA, but when he came back to the NWA, he was really as a limited role, and no one knew for sure he was going to stick around. Yeah, Patrick Moore brings up again. Yeah, Ricky Starks was in the territories too. I saw him there getting a title shot against Shaq Dane. Yeah, he's been around for a long time. He didn't disappear. But yeah. So all of that to say is that the NWA's the NWA did not want to have a North American title when NXT introduced a North American Championship. They wanted to keep something to themselves. So that's why they went with the national title. And there was lots of titles they could have went with. They could have went, and they did. They later did, like the NWA Mid-American Championship, currently held by Jeremiah Plunkett. The NWA, the NWA Midwest Championship, which is currently held by Dante Casanova. These were all kind of opportunities that the NWA could have gone, but they went with the national title because, again, that was always considered the number 2 title in the company. It was like the 10 pounds of gold was number 1, then North American title was number 2, and that national title was like number 3. Always like the number 2 contender for the 10 pounds of gold. That's why it came back to the NWA. With AEW, introducing their national title again, they're trying to tie their legacy to the national title from the 70s. But again, even that doesn't make sense because the title that the NWA had during the Jim Crockett Promotions era actually was merged with the U.S. title that was held by Jim Crockett Promotions that became WCW's U.S. title, which is currently held by Ilya Dragunov in the WWE. So the comparisons to having the national title from, the same title that Austin Idol had is just not, they're not connected. It's not the same. I'm out of breath and I'm losing my voice. All of this to say that the NWA very much still exists. The NWA is still promoting wrestling. Their next event is on December 13th. They're having 2 television tapings on the same day in Tampa. If you live in Tampa, you can check that out. Of course, tonight's episode of Power, which can be seen on the Roku app, Roku Sports, or on demand, you can check out the NWA there, and they're going to feature 3 matches tonight. Those matches are Max the Impaler versus El Dragón Nihan, the Puerto Rican monster. He's like 6'7", 6'8". He's a huge guy. Then we're also going to see matches featuring the NWA World Tag Team Champions defending the titles against the Immortals, the 2025 Crockett Cup Tag Team Tournament winners. And that's Trevor Murdoch and Mike Knox taking on Odinson and Kratos. And then in the main event, Thom Latimer defends the 10 pounds of gold against Thrillbilly Silas Mason. As I represent his Southern Six on my shirt right here, I'm excited to see that and what's going to happen next. We're about to end the show, but Patrick, I wanted to answer all your questions. So I'm going to answer this one, and then we're going to call it a night. Was there a reason why the NWA didn't renew the license from the Bruce Tharpe era when Billy Corgan took over? Yes. Billy initially had no interest in running a territory system. Billy had zero interest in having a licensing agreement. Billy just wanted one wrestling promotion. The NWA, as introduced under the Lightning One era, was all about just one wrestling promotion. It was going to be NWA. That's it, National Wrestling Alliance. And they were going to do live events, and they were going to do pay-per-views, and they were going to do eventually television. They did all of that. And then they decided to add territories. So long story short, they didn't renew the licenses because they didn't want to renew the licenses. And let's be honest, if you look at most of the territories, or most of the licenses during the Bruce Tharpe era, it was a money grab. These promotions were not high quality. They did not bring value to the NWA. There were a handful of them that were solid. Innovative Pro Wrestling is the one that always comes to mind. But there was a lot of promotions associated with the NWA during that time that just weren't good. They were terrible. Now, there was a lot of good promotions in Texas, and there were some good promotions in Tennessee. But there were some promotions that did not belong in the NWA. Lots of them were just the drizzling shits. So with that being said, why continue to bring in something that wasn't good? It's time to be something different. So with that being said, I'm now 2 hours and 5 minutes into talking wrestling. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, whether you joined in the first hour, second hour, or you've been here all along. I do appreciate you being with me today. Real quick, we got to go to Willie Bowen's Tires Joke of the Day, which is, "Hi, J. Cal. Tyrus is going to be in a sequel to Brokeback Mountain. It's called Broken Car? Broken Truck? I don't know what that is, Willie. I can't tell what that icon is. Sean Monnier, thanks for the Sean Moyer, thanks for the roses. I do appreciate you guys being here, but I am exhausted. It is time to call it a night. Thank you so much for being here. We will be back on Thursday to celebrate Silas Mason winning a match. And until next time, listen here, Daddy. We'll see you at the matches. Good night now. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.